Mario Kart Wii has 32 tracks, and in this video, we're going to be ranking the first 16 of them. Each track will get up to 10 points, 5 for time trials and 5 for online. The higher the score, the better the track. This video is going to be a long one, so without further ado, let's just get started. So Luigi Circuit. This one, for time trials, I think is a pretty cool one. It's really good for practicing consistency. It's the kind of track where you can't mess up at all if you want to get a good time. It's very straightforward, lots of, well, literally straightforward, I guess. I mean, it's a lot of straightaways. You just kind of align, get your mini turbo wheelie, and don't turn in your wheelie, get your wheelie chains. It's an easy track to get started with. It gets more difficult the more you play it, as does any track, but this one, that's kind of amplified just with how simple it is. I know the shortcut at the end can be kind of annoying. It's easy to mess it up. Even though it's just a little off-road shortcut, you can hit the pipes, you can have a bad angle going into it. Sometimes you just hit too much of the off-road and it throws everything off. Honestly though, I think this is a pretty good time trial track. I like it, and I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 for time trials. If you're playing this track online, things change quite a bit. There's just too many items. There are too many item sets for a track this short. It's like you have items right in the beginning, so why would you not bag there? I mean, why would you not just wait so you can get something good? And then if you don't get something good there, well, you can chain it at the next set, and then at the very end, they have more items placed there right before the shortcut. So it's like, this is a very item-heavy track, a track where you're just bagging a lot, and it's not really fun. It's just kind of, whenever I play it, I just want it to be over. And back to the simple straightforwardness that I was talking about in the time trial section, that works in time trials. It doesn't work online. If you have tracks that are just like pretty much circles, they don't play as well online. I don't know how to put it really. I guess just because online's a lot more active, you know, you're moving around a lot more and you have to be adaptive. So when a track is this boring, it's just kind of, well, it's boring. Between the boring design and the just terrible item placement, I honestly think this is one of the worst online tracks in the whole game. So it's getting a 1 from me out of 5. But it is not bottom tier because it is a pretty cool time trial track. So we're gonna give this C tier. Next up, we have Moo Moo Meadows. Moo Moo Meadows, overall, pretty fun track. The shroom shortcut, it's just a shroom shortcut through the grass. It's simple, but it's satisfying if you get the line real tight. Now, overall, in time trials, it's a pretty fun track until you get to the very end. They just had to ruin it with one key detail, and that is the ramp. The ramp here is just known for being terrible. Sometimes you go off of it and you get way too much air, and sometimes you don't get the boost at all, or you get the boost but it doesn't let you trick. And then there's the rare occurrence where you get the low trick off the ramp because you got to just drive off a very, very tiny little sliver of it to get the right trick. If it wasn't for this ramp, I think this would probably be like a solid 4. But this ramp just makes this track a nuisance. It's really not an enjoyable one to play, in my opinion. I mean, I wish I could say that I somewhat enjoyed time trialing this, and you know what? I do. I just can't with that stupid ramp at the end. It's really unfortunate that that's the case, but it does just ruin the whole track for me. So for time trials, I gotta give Moo Moo Meadows a 1. For online, it's not as bad. It suffers kind of the same fate as Luigi Circuit. There's just too many items. Bagging feels overpowered. It's like there's an item set right in the beginning, so you can bag there and then pull triple shrooms and then take one grass cut and then take the second grass cut, and then you're in first with a mushroom. Like, that can be the case way too often. It's just free breakaway, basically. You don't need to worry about the ramp as much just because online, you know, you don't need to be completely precise with everything. There's a lot more room for like tiny mistakes and tiny time losses like the ramp. It's still just annoying. I don't know, this track just never seems like it's that fun. I don't enjoy playing it very much, not in time trials. Certainly not in time trials. I guess online it's okay. If this track didn't have the first item set, it would be a lot more interesting, I feel like. Really, it's not even that there's too many items. I think that's what I said before. It's not as much that there's too many, it's just the placement of the first set is so... like, you'd be stupid not to wait behind most of the time. I'm giving this a 2.5 for online. It's okay. It's really middle of the road. With a couple small changes, they could have made it a lot better. That means this one has an overall score of 3.5, D tier. Next up, we have Mushroom Gorge. So time trialing on Mushroom Gorge, it is very difficult to learn. I would say it's a pretty technical track, but it's also pretty consistent. If you know what you're doing, like people who are good at this track can always get a good time here pretty much, as long as they don't like fall off or something. The mushroom pads are cool. They're entirely unique to this track. This is the only track that has mushroom pads. And I feel like the mushroom pads, they're kind of janky how they work, especially like their shape. Like if you hit the middle of a mushroom pad and you bounce way higher than if you hit not the very edge, but like the close to the edge of the mushroom pad, you get way less air. Anyway, I feel like the mushroom pads really just, that's kind of what makes this track so iconic, especially in the cave. It's almost all bouncy mushrooms with a couple green ones here and there. I think the cave section works really well, and I think that's because of the mushroom pads. They add a lot to the track. And this is the first track we've looked at so far that actually has a glitch. This glitch is the Ultra shortcut, one of the oldest known Ultras in the entire game, one of the fastest Ultras in the entire game. I haven't sunk much time in actually playing the glitch on this track, but it just is bizarre. I mean, hands down the most unique category in the game. And it's so fascinating. It's satisfying to watch it, because you know it's so precise and you gotta do everything right, and it's just like staying on the wall for the entire track. Anyway, just a couple other things. I feel like it's a really good length for a time trial track. For no glitch, that is. It's about 1:40 is where the world record sits currently, and that's good. You know, it's not too long. It's not 2.5 minutes, but it's also not too short, like some other tracks that we'll get to later. I mean, I don't have any complaints. This is an easy 5 for time trials for me. I love this track. So online, it's a decent track. Not as good as it is in time trials. The item placement's weird. It feels like, I mean, I guess this is kind of inevitable because there's mushrooms throughout the whole track, but all the items are either like right on mushroom pads or right before mushroom pads. And this wouldn't be that weird. This wouldn't be a big deal at all, but it's pretty clear that the track wasn't designed with certain items in mind. So like red shells don't really travel across the mushroom pads. The POW blocks don't do anything when you're in the air on the mushroom pads, like in the cave especially, you're in the air most of the time. And speaking of the cave, I mean, if you use the bullet in the cave, it's just too easy. It's too good. It is also possible to dodge the blue shells using the mushroom pads, but I've only ever seen that happen once, and that was a while ago. It's not a bad track online. It's still pretty good, but I mean, if they just made some small adjustments, or if the items worked a little differently, I bet it could be a lot better. I still enjoy it online. I still think it's a great track. It still plays really well. I'm gonna give it a 4 for online. A solid 4, a respectable 4. This track is A tier. Next up we have Toad's Factory. This is the part of the video where I really gotta remind you guys, this is my opinion, okay? I am not a huge fan of the factory. I love the music, I love the design, I love the whole theme, I think it's really cool, but it doesn't play that well. So let's start with time trials. It's a very difficult technical track. It's kind of like Mushroom Gorge, but it's just more annoying because there are a couple things right at the end of the track that can kill your time trial runs. So you got the lake shortcut. Obviously you can mess that up and end up in the water, and then the run is just totally dead. And something I haven't really had to put up with much because I'm not playing the track at a high level, but the low trick at the end as well. So there's a ramp, and what you need to do is you need to hop onto it and then hop again to get a low trick. And I mean, this isn't that hard to do, But if you got the stress of a perfect run leading up to this very last little maneuver and you mess it up, it loses a lot of time. Now it has a glitch, and the glitch is seriously cool. So that helps it a bit in the time trial section. There's more to do with the track. And fun fact, there was actually a while where this glitch was known about and people didn't know if it was ever going to be humanly viable. And now it's like not even considered that bad. I haven't ever performed the glitch, but it looks cool. So who cares if it's fun to play, right? I think I'm going to be generous and give this a 3 for time trials. Because it's just, like I said, the glitch helps it, but I just don't enjoy playing it most of the time. When you're playing it online, it's pretty hectic. The outside section with all the conveyor belts going back and forth, it's a little bit more annoying than usual because items will fly out of the crates. Sometimes this is cool though, because if you accidentally hit a crate and then you just get a free mushroom, it's like, that's nice. It doesn't feel like the whole track is determined by items. It feels like if you're good at the track, you do well. If you're bad at the track, like myself, you don't do well. It's definitely got that advantage over like a Luigi Circuit or a Moo Moo Meadows. When you're playing it online, if you lose, good chance it wasn't because of items. There's a good chance you just weren't good at driving it. I'd say I like this track online more than I like it in time trials. I'm gonna give it a 4. This track's a 4, yeah. That means it is a 7 overall. This one gets B tier. It's not great. So next up we have Mario Circuit. This one is really fun for time trials. I mean, this is just a super cool track. I know it looks super bland. It's really just a figure 8. Just looking at times throughout the years, I mean, the strats have changed here so many times. It used to be just no ramp at all, and then it was like, kind of go for the ramp. I know King Alex had a world record where he used the ramp once and got the craziest little like trick ever, which is now called the King Alex ramp. And then fast forward to today, and the world record has 3 King Alex ramps in it. It's changed a lot over the years, is my point, and I think that's cool because it just means there's so many different ways to play what seems on the surface to be a relatively simple track. I already would have given this track a pretty high grade, but it also has a glitch. And the glitch also has had the strats change so many times over the years. Much more dramatically than no glitch, even. First, people just did the glitch once, and then they did it twice, and then they did 3, and then they did it no stop, and then they started clipping one of the other trees on the right side, and then they went back to the left side, and then they started clipping the mountain, and now there's actually a new strat that is yet to be used in a world record that is faster, where you clip one of the trees on the right, and you fly off to the left. And I guess that's faster than just clipping off the mountain. It's just so cool to watch. This track is really hard to play for the glitch specifically in time trials, but it's very cool to spectate. Looking at all the different strats and all the different times, it's hard to believe you're even watching the same track. I mean, if I could give this a 6, I would. This is an absolute 5 out of 5 for time trials. Now online, it's unfortunately a lot worse. There's huge off-road cuts, like 3 big off-road cuts on a pretty short track. So like where the ramp is, you could take the off-road cut there, and then you could chain into another box, and then there's just the huge off-road cut around the entire like rest of the track. They had the brilliant idea of putting an item set right before this huge off-road cut. So, I mean, let's say you're in a low spot, you pull a star or a golden, and then you can just cut through all this grass and save a load of time. It's just one of those situations where it's like, did they playtest this? Did they see if this would work? Did they theorize this, or did they just wing it and assume it would be fine? That aspect alone of just having items right before the huge shortcuts, it makes the track entirely item based. Probably more than any other track we've looked at so far. I would say maybe even more than the Luigi Circuit, and that's saying something. It still can be fun, you know, if you want to just bag and basically gamble for items, that can be a fun experience. I would say this is still one of the more fun bagging tracks, one of the more fun, ridiculously item-heavy tracks in the game, because there are other ones that are just just stupid. This one's stupid too, but it's kind of like fun stupid. Just because there are other tracks that are worse, I'm giving this a 1.5 for online, as opposed to just a 1. I don't got much else to say about this one. The time trials is awesome. The online is pretty weak. This one gets B tier. Next up, we have Coconut Mall. So this track is really inconsistent and really difficult and really technical. I mean, you have to learn so much to play this track. And this is one of those tracks where you can just lose time and you just don't know where. You don't know where you're losing the time. You don't know what's going wrong. Despite it being annoying though, despite these complaints, it's weirdly also fun. It's much more enjoyable than other tracks of this sort, and there are other ones. I mean, just take Toad's Factory, for example. My main complaint with Toad's Factory is that it was just inconsistent, and there's tricks you can mess up right at the end. Well, Coconut Mall is the same way. You know, if you hit a car right at the end, your race is over. But I don't know, this one is just more fun to play, in my opinion. It's just under 2 minutes, which is a little bit longer than any of these other tracks we've looked at so far. And I kind of like that. It's not like ridiculously long still. It's pretty tolerable. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about this one. It's frustrating. It's kind of annoying, but it's also kind of fun. It's also got a glitch category. And the glitch category, depending on how you play it, can either be one of the easiest glitches in the entire game or one of the, I wouldn't say like one of the hardest, but really hard. That's another one similar to Mario Circuit, how it's just changed ridiculous amounts over the years, so it's kind of funny to compare the modern day high-level Coconut Mall times to the Coconut Mall times from, you know, 2011, where nobody knew where the checkpoints were, nobody knew what they were doing at all. I'm giving this one a 3.5 for time trials, just because it's sort of a balance of the good and the bad. I think this track is also pretty good online. So the items are well placed. They're not too many of them. I think the first box set is just a little bit, like every time I play this track, I bag at the first box set, and almost every time it pays off. Besides that one item set, I feel like the rest of the items in the track are pretty reasonably placed. They all make sense. I like the ones with the fountains where it's like you have to get a bunch of air, but you can also get an item, so maybe it's worth it. I think that's kind of a cool trade-off. And there's also an online-only shortcut that uses the Thundercloud, which is pretty awesome. I guess you don't need a Thundercloud, you could just do it with a shock as well, but sadly it's been banned. I'll show it on the screen now. I think this is just one of the coolest things because, like, no one ever wants a Thundercloud. This gave it purpose, but you know, can't do it in Worldwides anymore. Anyway, having longer tracks online is generally good in my opinion, because with all the time in between races for like loading and then voting and then getting everyone's game to be loaded at the same time for the race to start, you can be waiting like a good minute or two sometimes there. So having a longer track is nice. It's just more playtime. The kind of downside that comes with that online is you end up with some people way up in first, like first and second way up there, and then last is like way behind, and it's just not even close. And considering how hard it is just to drive on Coconut Mall, because of how inconsistent and technical and hard it is, if you got someone who's a master at Coconut Mall, they're going to be way up in first. And if you got someone who's new, they're going to be struggling. And you know, I think that's a bad thing, in that when races aren't close at all, that means they're not really that fun. But also, it's a skill-based track, right? The better players usually win. So, there's good and bad there. I would say it's more enjoyable online than it is in time trials, even if there are some stupid things that can happen. Namely with the escalators. I'm giving this one a 4 for online. I'm thinking this is going to be a low A tier. If anything else is an A tier, it probably is going to beat them all. We'll have to see though. Next up, DK Summit. In my opinion, this is the most difficult track in the entire game. And it's not even really close. So the bump section can either be really fast or really slow, and it's hard to be consistent at that. It just kind of happens either way, however it wants. The double shortcut isn't as bad when you're going for the easy method, but as you start going for it faster and then doing the hop off little strat, it gets more difficult. And then the Jimmy strat is just really, really hard. This whole track is definitely a test of patience, and I don't think it's very fun for time trials. Yeah, that's it. I'm giving it a 2. But online, this track is splendid. It is way better than it is in time trials. You don't gotta worry as much about the tiny time losses, so like the bumps or, you know, taking a slightly faster double shortcut. You can do the slow method and you're not at a disadvantage doing that online. You know, people can block that double shortcut. They can put a fib down there. They can put bananas. So it is a risk. It's a risk with high reward. If you make it, then you save a ton of time. And if you fail it, then a lot of times you'll get a good respawn anyways. You know, high risk, high reward. That's what you want. And one last thing. I like that the bullet takes the double shortcut. If you drive off and you use the bullet, it knows what to do. It doesn't know what to do with almost any other shortcut in the game, so I appreciate this one. Anyway, I give this a 5 for online. I love this track. It's great. Combining the online and offline scores, this gets a very respectable B tier. We're putting it above the factory because it's just cooler. We've got Wario's Gold Mine. So for time trials, this track is as tough as it is rewarding. There's a lot of different strats, so it's easy to get started. It's kind of similar to like Coconut Mall Mario Circuit, where you got your easier methods, and then once your time starts getting faster and faster, you can start learning the more difficult stuff. And I feel like Wario's Gold Mine might have more of that kind of stuff than any other track in the game. The first thing is the wall bounce, and then you have the turn skip, and then you have the detach, and then you have the second turn skip, and by that point, I mean, that's like top level stuff, but there's a lot to do. It's really fun. The glitch category is also really cool, and the glitch category similarly, I mean, you got the hopless pipe bounce, which is very easy, and then you can sort of work your way up to doing the hop pipe bounce and getting better times and faster times with that. This is definitely one of the greatest time trial tracks in the whole game. Seriously, this one does not get played enough. It does not get talked about enough, but this one is just awesome. So obviously I'm giving it a 5 for time trials. Online, it's okay, but there's one thing that just really holds this track back that it's lacking. There aren't any big shortcuts you can take online. So what this means is you can't really rely on risky, skill-based tricks to make comebacks happen. If you fall behind, you kind of just have to hope you get good items in order to make your way back up. And that's a shame. None of the other tracks we've looked at so far, even the super item-heavy ones, none of them have suffered from that. I mean, all of these tracks have something, some shortcut or something you can take in order to make back time. With Wario's Gold Mine, I mean, there are some strats that save a little time. I guess I don't see anyone talk about it or ever go for it. You could go for like the beam bounce online, but I don't even know how much that saves. Definitely not a lot. And again, my problem with not having like any big strats that save a lot of time is you can fall behind, and then all you have to hopefully get you back up is either the other people in the room messing up or you pulling great items. And I just don't really like that. I like having that high risk, high reward aspect where you have to go for this hard shortcut. You have to do this if you want to catch back up because you fell behind. But if you go all in here, maybe you'll make your way back up. You know, I hope I'm explaining myself well. My point is, I don't think Wario's Gold Mine has anything like that, and I think that holds it back as an online track. It's still fun to drive, it's still Wario's Gold Mine, which is a really satisfying track to play, but it just doesn't bring anything to the table online, so I gotta give it a 2.5. Either way though, it does break into A tier because it has a 7.5 score. Goes right there. We're now moving on to the retro tracks. So, we have 8 retro tracks we're looking at today. Starting with GCN Peach Beach. It's a spear track, which, similar to Mario Circuit, similar to Luigi Circuit. It's a lot of straightaways, a lot of just wheelie and then chain wheelie at the right time, and that's basically where you save all your time here. This track kind of cranks it up though, because It's pretty much just 2 long straightaways. It only has 2 full turns. I guess there's kind of 3. There's one that's like a half turn. But I feel like time trialing this track is almost entirely up to using your mushrooms right and getting your chain wheelies. And that's just not super exciting gameplay. It's not super fun. The water current is a cycle-based element. So I would say that adds to the track because it makes the shroom route kind of unique. It's not just use one shroom in the same spot on all 3 laps. You actually have to alter it to accommodate for the different water cycle. And when the water tide is super high, I guess it's kind of like you have 4 turns. So anything to get more action happening on this track, it's just so freaking boring. The cataquacks are there. I feel obligated to acknowledge them, but I don't have anything to say about them. They walk around. If you hit them, your run's over. If you don't hit them, then your run's probably alive. This track also has a glitch category. It's one of the most unanimously disliked glitches in the game. I actually kind of enjoy playing the glitch category here, though I don't like when it just gives you random no lap counts. No! I spent about 2 months playing this glitch and almost nothing else on Twitch. It was pretty bland most of the time. I mean, it's the kind of glitch where you can play it for an hour and get multiple glitches and you're just totally feeling good, feeling like you're on a roll, and then you can play for like 3 or 4 hours and get nothing. And it's just so annoying to get nothing and not know what you're doing wrong. You have to drive an entire lap before you can even go for the glitch, so it's like you don't even get that many attempts in. I mean, factor in loading and then driving a whole lap on, it's like a 25-second lap. Probably about 1 glitch every maybe 40 seconds, you get 1 attempt. For time trials, I'm gonna give this a 3. Just for the sake of it having a glitch category, I guess that's cool. So giving it a 3, I mean, that's kind of being nice anyways. So when you're playing this track online, it isn't much better. I would actually say that it's worse. It's even worse than time trials. So like I've already said, you've got 3 or maybe 4 turns to work with, depending on the water. So for playing online, most races are just boring. Like you're not doing anything. You're going straight, and then you're going straight, and that's it. This track also has a pretty bad item problem. Not that there are too many, but just that the placement is stupid. On the first turn, you can get an item. So just think with me here, hypothetically. Let's say you get a golden mushroom on that first item set. If the tide is high, you have a huge shortcut that takes up a large chunk of the track. If it's low, you just have a golden. Not only is this putting an item set right before a huge shortcut, but it's putting an item set right before a shortcut that's only there half the time. I would also say this track is kind of too short for online. Similar to like Luigi Circuit, I guess. It's over too quick. For how long you have to wait for the game to load and for everyone to pick a track, it's like you get to play for maybe a minute and a half, and it's not skill-based at all. It's just get good items and you win, basically. Again, I feel obligated to mention the cataquacks and just acknowledge that they're there. I don't know. I think they're a great hazard. I don't feel like they add much to the track. They don't make it more fun. They don't make it more enjoyable. Like, if you hit a cataquack, it just feels like, man, I really messed up. I already know these are all here, so that's totally just a mistake that I made on accident. And then if you're in second and first hits a cataquack, it's like, man, I didn't deserve this win. They just messed up, you know? I don't know. The track is bland. The track is boring. Overall, I think it's not one of the better tracks in the game, and I'm confident in saying that. For online, I'm saying this track gets a 1. It's just terrible online. Not compatible. I think what we're gonna do, I think we're gonna give this one C tier. Below Luigi Circuit, but C tier nonetheless. All right, folks. We have reached it. We are finally here. This track was the first one that I thought of like stuff to rank it with. We are at DS Yoshi Falls, and I'm pretty confident that this is the worst track in the entire game. I haven't looked into like ranking the second half, so like Daisy Circuit and on. I haven't thought of any of those, but I don't think any of them are going to be as bad as Yoshi Falls. I don't know how it could be that way. Let's start with time trials. So this track is painfully inconsistent, and that is because of QM. If you haven't heard of that, or you don't know what it means, QM stands for quantized movement. Basically what it is just very, very precise things that are too precise to realistically control. It's randomness. It's equated to RNG. So just a couple of examples of what some QM could be on various different tracks. Bouncing a little bit when you're driving over certain terrain. Maybe it could be sticking to the ground instead of driving off certain parts like ramps. Stuff that it's unfortunately just not realistic to control and get consistent with. And Yoshi Falls is full of stuff like that. This track is just downright painful for time trials due to how many things are out of your control. So just to name a couple things, and I'm no expert at Yoshi Falls, these are just the things I know. I know that you're supposed to not stick to the ground when you take the first little turn, going to the waterfall. You are supposed to then stick to the ground when you use the mushroom into the waterfall. You don't want to get a bunch of air. And then you need to stick to the ground when you're driving up towards the bridge. You don't want to go off that part like a ramp. You need to not float right over the boost pad going into the next waterfall, which unfortunately that happens a lot. You need to get air when you're going off into the waterfall, not get stuck to the ground. And then when you're going into the last boost panel, you need to not float right over it, which very sadly, you could have a perfect run and then float over the last boost pad, and it's just all for nothing. You won't ever get to a level where you're sticking to the bridge every single time. You won't ever get to a level where you're getting the air off the first turn every single time. You won't ever get to a level where you're hitting the boost pads every single time. This track is just a gamble. If you want to set a good time, you need to be playing at a high level and playing good, but also get lucky, basically. You just gotta hope, man. There's nothing you can do to get consistent at Yoshi Falls. It's like even with some of these other very difficult, very inconsistent tracks we've looked at, so like Coconut Mall, DK Summit, these tracks are hard, but they feel mentally stimulating. They feel entertaining enough to where it's like, if you lose to something that seems random or out of your control, something QM based, it's like, well, that sucks. But we'll keep moving forward. We'll start over, we'll play it again. With Yoshi Falls, it is just a lottery. It's one QM based thing after another. And if you tick all the boxes to have a good lap, then you gotta do it again, 2 more times. And if you do all of that and you get perfect QM on everything, well, your run still won't be good unless you were driving at a high level. I just think it's annoying. I think it's annoying that there's a track, and Yoshi Falls isn't the only QM track. Like I already said, Coconut Mall and DK Summit are very QM heavy as well. But with Yoshi Falls, it's just one thing after another, over and over. It is all just QM. I think it's annoying that if you don't hit the right microscopic little unit of movement or whatever on the ground at the right frame and the right time, well, then it's all over. I don't like that. I don't like that you can play perfectly, but if Yoshi Falls doesn't want you to succeed, then you won't. I just can't give this track any credit, man. It's just all around terrible. It gets a 1 for time trials. But I'm not done yet, because this track somehow managed to be just as bad online as it is in time trials. It is terrible online as well. For how short the track is, being the second shortest track in the game, 3 item sets just feels like too much. I mean, like 3 full item sets. The simple design is also just doesn't work for online. I mentioned this before, but having a plain circle track, maybe it works okay in time trials. It just is boring online. It's boring. And I will say this is the closest we have in the game to being an actual circle. It's not shaped like a circle, but it is just a round thing that connects around, so call it what you wish. I call it a circle. But wait, one might say, there are 3 split paths. At least there'll be variety in how the track is played, right? Well, the first split path actually makes sense. You can either take the inside line, which is faster, driving through the water, or you can take the top route, which is slower, but gives you an item. Again, this makes a lot of sense. As for the other 2, no, they're just both bad design. The second split path allows you to take the bridge route, which is tighter, faster, gives you an item, or you can take the waterfall route, which is wider, doesn't give you an item, has you driving through water, which is slower and risks you falling off since you're driving through so much of it and you could get hit by an item. There is no point of ever taking the waterfall path here. Ever. You gain nothing from it, ever. It is always 100% of the time a bad idea to take this route. You will gain nothing from it. The third and last split path also doesn't really make sense. You can either take the tighter, faster line, which gives you a chance at an item, or you can take the wider line, not get an item, and get tossed off a ramp. Yeah, there are boost panels, but the airtime you get from the ramp makes them essentially useless. This track is poorly designed and frustrating. There's no reason to play it online. It gets a 1. That, combined with its time trial score, is a 2 out of 10. This track is good for nothing. Next up, we have SNES Ghost Valley 2. This track is great for time trials, super consistent and really fun to play. The shortcut's a little tricky. It's kind of hard to figure out the landing. Sometimes you'll use the shroom a little too early and you won't make it. Sometimes you use it too late and then you'll land and be like forced into taking a really weird, bad angle. But besides the shortcut, it seems like it's very consistent, very flat, so it's great for like practicing your driving, and it's really fun. It's really fun to play. It being so short takes away a little from the track. It's only 52 seconds for the current no glitch world record, and that's really fast. I guess if I could change one thing about this track, I'd probably want it to be a little bit longer. This track also has a glitch, which in my opinion is pretty underwhelming. However, I think the world record strat's really cool. I like that. But just the 1 for 3 glitch is kind of whatever. You're skipping one turn. If you do it twice, like you're saving a second, I think, maybe a little over a second for doing an ultra shortcut twice. It's just, I don't know, it's whatever. The glitch doesn't add a lot to the track, but it's still a great track on its own. If it was a little bit longer, I would give it a 5, but I'm gonna give it a 4.5. Still great. It could just be a little bit better. Online, it's just too short. It being too short in time trials isn't that big a deal. For how long you wait in between online races, just between the voting, the loading, getting everyone in the room, it feels frustrating to get this track because it's too short. It feels like a waste of time. Now, the shortcut is especially cool online because it's like a split path. You can either take the shortcut and it's faster, or you can not take the shortcut but then get an item, and who doesn't love items? I think this is cool. I like this, but it definitely doesn't save the track by any means. Now, one thing that I think would absolutely fix this track is if they just made it 5 laps. That's how it was in the SNES version. If this was a 5-lap track, it would be much longer. That'd be cool. It would be unique because all the other tracks are 3 laps and they're all a pretty appropriate length. But if this was 5 laps, it still wouldn't be as long as like Rainbow Road or Bowser Castle 64. It definitely would have been reasonable had they done that. I think it's kind of a shame they didn't, but it is what it is. I gotta give this one a 2 for online. If it was longer, it'd be great. The races are over so quick, it doesn't feel like anything can happen. A lot of times, there won't be any blue shells used, there won't be any shocks used, because it's just over before it even starts. If you're starting in first place on this track and you don't make a huge mistake, there's a good chance you're finishing in first. But that said, that cuts it into B tier. Now, it's not better than the Summit. Is it better than the Factory? Yeah, I think that's the right spot for it. Yeah, that's good. We got N64 Mario Raceway. So, for time trials, it can be tricky, but it's very fun to learn. The shortcut is hard to get consistently. Feels like a lot of times you get swung out way too far and then you end up in the grass, or you hit the piranha plants, or whatever. There's a few different outcomes. That's the most inconsistent part of the track, I feel like. I would say it's just the right length as well, in like the 140s range. 140 something. Current world record's a 141. Also, there is one trick that's really cool, the double pipe trick, where you do the trick entering the pipe and then you do another one when you leave. I think that trick looks really cool. I just wanted to comment on that because it's sick. I don't got a lot to say about this one. Gets a 4.5 for time trials. It's pretty good. Online, this is probably the most item heavy track in the whole game. Not only are there huge grass cuts where you can take, one of which being at the very end of the track, but it just feels like there's boxes everywhere. It feels like none of the race even matters until you're like halfway through lap 3. Even after that, it's common to see complete turnarounds at the very end where you're in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and then you pull a golden and you go around the pipe and you save a ton of time and you end up in first. I mean, that happens. But I will say, despite this track feeling like it's not skill-based at all, despite it feeling like it's completely up to items, it still manages to be pretty fun. I'm gonna give it a 2 for online. It's still, I mean, it's still just a lot worse than a track that you can play normal. You have to play it like this. If you're not bagging, you're not winning, which I think is unfortunate, but it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun if you have everyone in the room bagging, because it's still competitive. It's just in a different way. This one's also getting put in B tier. I think we're gonna give this worse than Ghost Valley 2 placement. That seems, yeah, that's good. We have N64 Sherbet Land. So this is the only track in the game that currently uses Magic Cruiser for the world record. It's got some cool parts. The shroom shortcut where you cut off that little turn, that's probably the coolest part of the track. It's pretty satisfying when you pull it off and cut off like a bunch of it. Unfortunately, there is one pretty big problem with time trialing this track. You're supposed to get, I think it's 15 chain wheelies throughout the whole thing, because there's just such long straightaways. The chain wheelies don't matter at like a lower level, and I'm not super good at this track, so I don't need to worry about it, but I still don't like that about the track. This track does have an ultra shortcut, which I think is a really cool one. So the ultra shortcut was discovered back in 2015, I believe, and back then you had to use Spear and you could only do the glitch once and you had to respawn. And then developments happened, and then you didn't have to respawn. You could do the glitch and land back on the track, and then you'd have another mushroom left over. So then people switched to Magic Cruiser, and then they switched back to Spear for a minute and started doing 2 glitches in a run, and then they switched back to Magic Cruiser doing 2 glitches in a run. And because of recent developments, now using the Spear, if you use an alignment ghost, like perfect alignment, you can get the glitch with 1 mushroom and land back, which means you can do it on all 3 laps. So this track has quite the history. It's come quite a long way. I still wish for no glitch you didn't have to chain wheelie so many times, but I'm gonna give this one a 3.5 for time trials. It's good. It's like a C+ time trial track. For online, this track just ain't it, man. There are so many tracks on here where I feel like they're really good in time trials and then really bad online, or the other way around, right? Like a track will be great for online, but just not fun for time trials. So I don't think I said why Sherbet Land was a Magic Cruiser track. The entire ice section of Sherbet Land, that means the entire track, except for the cave, is off-road and it is slippery. So you go slower on it and it's harder to control. And this makes sense if they're trying to make a realistic game. I don't think that's really what they were going for with Mario Kart. So the way to get around that off-road and that slippery effect is by using a vehicle with great off-road, and you can, use the Magic Cruiser as the main one. And it doesn't matter that the Magic Cruiser has low speed. None of that stuff matters, because you've got good off-road. That's all you need for Sherbet Land. The problem with playing the track online is a lot of times you end up playing it because someone voted for it or someone picked random. But by that point, you're already locked in using Flame Runner or Mach Bike or maybe Wild Wing if you're a karter. You're probably not using Magic Cruiser. So playing this track online usually ends up being really slippery, really just awkward to control. Once you get used to it, it's not that bad. It's never any fun though when there's one person playing Magic Cruiser online, constantly voting Sherbet Land every single race. And then, if Sherbet Land gets picked, the Magic Cruiser wins, right? Almost all the time. Not a super good track online. I would definitely say it's better for time trials. I gotta give this one a 1.5, unfortunately. Yeah. I think it's better than Peach Beach because it does have problems online. It has unique problems, but it doesn't feel like it's a luck-based track. Doesn't feel like you're relying entirely on items to win the race for you. So it's not as bad as it could be. Next up, we have GBA Shy Guy Beach. So for time trials, this track is pretty neat, actually. It has two completely different time trial strats. So you can use the Magic Cruiser, which will let you take the off-road shortcuts littered throughout the entire track, or you can use the Spear, which is much more difficult, but also slightly faster if you play almost perfectly. Spear is faster if you're taking the lines exactly how you need to take them, and then Magic Cruiser's faster if you just want to drive through off-road and not have to worry about anything. It's kind of cool because the Magic Cruiser is basically just like the easy way out for getting a solid time, like a decent time. But if you really want to push your time to the next level, you have to use Spear, and then you have to learn the Spear strats, which are like really hard. This track also has a glitch, an ultra shortcut, and wouldn't you know it, the glitch also has two completely different methods of doing it. So there's the zip method, which is used in 3 lap times. That's what the glitch world record uses. And then there's the Spear method, which is only used for fast lap, 1 lap times. And the reason it's only used for 1 lap is because you need to clip off of this bomb. The problem with clipping off that bomb is that it doesn't get shot out of the cannon over to there until after like 3 minutes. So you have to just wait for 3 minutes until the bomb is there. And it's kind of cool just how close the lap times are using completely different strats. Anyway, really fascinating track, pretty fun to play, very fun challenge to try and play it with Spear. I give this one a 4.5 for time trials. I like it. Shy Guy Beach Online is not good. It is awful. Those huge off-road cuts, they are literally everywhere. No matter what part of the track you're on, you could be taking an off-road cut. What this means is that the track is completely up to items. Well, almost completely up to items. Yes, you could just bag and then get a golden and then take a huge shortcut and get a lead, but that requires good luck, you know? You gotta hit the item box, and you gotta actually, there's some level of risk to it. So instead, you could just use the Magic Cruiser, because as we've already established with Sherbetland, the Magic Cruiser just has really good off-road. So basically, pick Magic Cruiser, go to Shy Guy Beach, drive in all the water, get a huge lead over everyone else, and you win. You just win. That's just how it works. That's usually the reason the track gets picked online, is because one person's playing Magic Cruiser and they're voting it. And yeah, when that's the case, Magic Cruiser usually wins. It's just so overpowered to be able to take all the off-road cuts, saving all that time without even needing to rely on the randomness of items. It's one thing if a track is totally left up to items, but at least then it's an equal playing field for everyone. I feel like picking a pretty obscure vehicle just so you'll have a huge advantage on 2 tracks in Worldwides, it makes it so it's not fun for... I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is this track is not good online. It's just not. It gets a 1. I don't enjoy playing this track online at all. Unless I'm on Magic Cruiser, then I usually win, so it's cool. This track's combined score is a 5.5. We're gonna go ahead and put this in C tier. It just feels right. I think that's where it belongs. We have DS Delfino Square. So for time trials, this track is very, very nice. Very beginner friendly, but still difficult to master. You won't really find yourself losing time to random bounces or other things that are just out of your control. Not a super QM infected track. The one thing that's a little bit annoying is the bridge, specifically the lap 2 bridge. You can get some weird interactions that can potentially mess up your runs and make you lose good times. That's the only thing that brings this track down from a 5 to a 4.5 though. I mean, really, this one just never feels like it gets old. It's a great track. Yeah, it's consistent. It feels very fluid. It's great. I love it. 4.5 for time trials. And for the first time on this list, I can also say that this track is incredible online. The items are well placed. The split path right before the mud shortcut actually makes a lot of sense. So you hit an item box, but before you know what item you're getting, you need to make a decision. So you can either take the shroomless dock shortcut, assuming you won't get mushrooms. You can take the normal path, which will allow you to potentially take the mud cut if you do get mushrooms, or you can start setting up for the double shortcut if you're confident that you're going to get 2 mushrooms or a golden, or a star, whatever. There's actual risk and planning involved here. And I think this part of the track here, that just makes the whole thing so much more interesting. And that really, it feels like the entire rest of the track is centered around this one little split decision here. You could also think about potentially, you know, what if somebody traps the little ramp for the dock shortcut, and then, well, you know, maybe you could do a little spin drift and make it over there, but what if you're not on 150cc, so then you can't? It's like, this whole track is awesome. It plays so well already, so having a split path that makes a lot of sense and actually incorporates risk and reward, I mean, this is an easy 5 for online. Very easy 5. And folks, we have our first S-tier track. Looking at all these other ones, I don't know if we're going to have any more. We have this one, though. The last track we're going to be looking at today is GCN Waluigi Stadium. So for time trials, this is a very difficult track. It's similar to Coconut Mall, similar to DK Summit, in that it's just very technical. And I'm sure there are some players who are consistent at it, but it don't feel consistent to me. It's really hard to play. Lots of stuff you need to learn to just not constantly be losing little bits of time here and there. This track does have a glitch. It's an ultra shortcut, and it's one of the hardest ones in the game, probably like 3rd hardest in the game. Depending on who you ask, maybe even 2nd hardest. It's a really tough one. It's usually a frame perfect glitch, which is really, really hard. Think about a 60th of a second. 1/60th of a second. That's how much time you have to click the button in the Waluigi Stadium glitch. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. I feel like I would like this track a lot more if I was just better at the game in general, but at my current level, I'd say I give this a 3 for time trials. Credit to the glitch though, it's maybe the coolest looking glitch in the whole game. Playing the track online, it's pretty much just as hard to drive as it is offline. The players who know the track really well will often break away and have huge leads, and this isn't necessarily bad. The players who know the track the best, the players who are the best at it, deserve to win. The track is really cool, but I'd imagine it's a lot more enjoyable for top level players. For me, I'm not top level. I give this one a 3.5 for online. It's not that bad. It's not legendary either. It's gonna be in B tier. I think that's where it's gonna go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, folks, we are finished with the first half of our tier list, and that marks the end of this video. I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. I wonder if anything else isn't gonna end up down here in D tier. I don't know actually. Anyways, let me know what you think about this. Let me know which tracks you guys think are S tiers, which ones you think are good for nothings. I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for the next part. I love you guys, and I hope to see you in the next one.